Tim Randolph, how are you, my friend?
Excellent.
Good. Off camera, we've been talking a lot of music. And it's always fun when I start interviews. I don't have 10 questions put out. I like to actually find out something about the person and sort of feel how they feel about music. And we have very similar views because the way the music industry is now, I honestly think it's the best it's ever been, which is going to go against all trends here because everybody's like, well, we used to sell 10 million copies. Yes, but now it's come back to creativity. And so we were talking about that. We're talking about how now it's less formulaic and now it's more creative in many, many ways.
Yeah, well, I think the machine, there is I don't know if there is a machine anymore, but
Sure.
if there is, it's much smaller. It doesn't work as well. And yeah, I think it's personally I'm really just happy to be working in music right now. I don't think I'd rather, I wish it was 95 and I was just,
Sure.
I mean, if you're trying to, from a purely financial perspective, yeah, if you were just an engineer,
Sure.
and like you'd be doing obviously much better in 95. But as far as what I do, which is I see myself, somewhere between, writer, producer, sort of the modern idea of a producer, which isn't somebody that comes in and takes an existing set of songs. I mean, what the work I've done recently is I'm involved in the creating of the songs, and I love that.
Well, what I found was interesting we were talking about was like your production style, I think is a modern way of doing it, but also I think has always been the best way to serve the song. It's interesting when I go back and I look at, say, even something as pop as, say, a Phil Collins records in the 80s. I was reading a little bit about...
I love those records.
I love those records. And I was reading, I didn't know this until very recently, that Hugh Padgham heard his demos and was like, these 8-track, I think, demos in his home studio, and was like, we don't need to retrack most of this. And then just added to it and mixed it. And I didn't know that was happening in those days. Now, obviously, it's Phil Collins, and he had, by that stage, had a 15-year career or whatever, so he wasn't like a kid necessarily. However, I didn't realize it was happening then, and I was so refreshed to hear that, because your experience recently working on the Imagine Dragons Evolve record, you were saying that you took songs that they had worked in Ableton. Is that what you were saying?
In that case, I mean, I was involved in the genesis of the songs.
Great.
Worked with the band to basically build bed tracks, and then would send those to Dan, and he, top line on them.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, no, kind of like how like a hip hop record is made, or
nice. And what DAW were you using?
Logic is my
Logic's
my main thing. Yeah,
that's great.
That's what I do. Yeah, like the initial stages of writing and stuff. As things are developing, I'll bring in Ableton, and then if I'm doing live instruments, I'll use Pro Tools.
Fantastic. Well, that's also refreshing to hear that you're mixing your DAWs, choosing the best man for the job, as opposed to being like, oh no, I only use this or only use that.
Yeah, I think it's almost like how you have this and you have this and you have this. Mm-hmm. It's almost the modern version of that. It's like you have you go to different tools for different sounds, sure. And yeah, I just think it keeps it fresh.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
then you're kind of forced to print. You're not forced, but I do it.
No,
I go to Ableton, I do my thing, I print it, fly it in as small as I can, 2 tracks, stereo.
Great.
And you're just, I mean, like it's scary, but when you do it, at the end of the day, you're stoked. And you got this little session, your song. It's not like, I mean, I don't know about you. It's like, there's 100, I mean, my brain, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to think of song, and you're looking at this endless, that's just...
Yeah. Well, I think that can make sense if you're the guy from start to finish. But when you hand that stuff off, it's like, I get it. There's no reason now to print maybe a whole orchestra to stereo tracks. You can leave it, you can blend it the way you want to it, and then hand it off to a mixer. As long as the mixer knows that those 47 microphones are coming through this stereo bus. But what gets so frustrating sometimes when somebody hands you 47 tracks that are not blended and you have absolutely no idea what their vision is. Yeah.
Well, I think people are moving more towards printing. I mean, I don't know if people are, but I
Right.
certainly am.
Yeah.
Or like I remember seeing Tom Elmhurst,
yeah.
because he was saying, yeah, that's what he does when he gets a session. The first thing he does is he just bounces. He takes all background vocals, takes them down. He said he gets it so he can see it all in the edit
Right.
window. Yeah, that was definitely inspiring to me, and I think that's just for me. That's the only way to
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
No, I completely understand.
If it was purely a mixer,
Yeah.
maybe it'd be different, but yeah.
So your creative process. So I'm excited to hear about that. So you're working with the band, combination you're saying of live and program stuff. Was it in a rehearsal room? Was it in a studio? Was it in all of the above?
Well, the way we got these songs together, really it started with some music I had written, chord progression and drums, kind of just like a basic demo that I sent to Dan Reynolds, the singer.
Yep.
I'd send him like 3 or 4 tracks at a time, and he'd pick maybe a couple that he liked, or hopefully, yeah, sometimes one, sometimes none.
Yep.
And send it back to me, send it to the band, send it to the management. Yeah, we did about 22 of those.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was quite a few. And I was telling you before, they did 150 demos for this album. They took a year off, so it was like a really long process. Like one of these songs, the demo was done probably end of 2015. You know, you go through thinking, oh, this song, yeah, this other song, oh, this is the one, man, this is the one. Everyone loves it, everyone loves it. And then like 6 months later, like, not too sure about that one, but these two, Mouth of the River and I'll Make It Up to You, just they stayed in the
running the whole
pool.
time.
Yeah,
Great.
down to 11 songs
Oh,
from
wow.
150. So
It's quite an accomplishment.
yeah, no, no, seriously.
You're like,
I was like, man, that's, and I was nervous, and I always wanted to support them, and have the attitude, like I didn't want to be like, oh,
sure.
where my song is gonna be, I was like, dude, I know you guys got to make the best record possible, if my songs are on there, that's great. If not,
No, that's
I'm
great.
like-
That's a refreshing attitude. I've been involved in albums where I've seen writer, producer guys getting a little aggressive, should we say?
no, I'm sure it happens, and I mean, I don't know, I just can't do that, it's just
Right, but I think, and this is a really good part of the discussion, because I think that that's part of being a producer and a writer, is being able to get the best out of the artist. And the best way to get the best out of the artist is when they trust you, when they trust that your motives. Yesterday, for instance, I was working with an artist and we got into a little bit of this, and I was like, dude, my agenda is I want this to be the best song. This is not me taking it personally. I'm pushing you on this because I think that melody should be better. I need this to be the best song. And he was like, oh, okay. And we went in and reworked it because he trusts me. And I think that that's by you not, being overbearing, they're trusting that you just want the best for them. And I think that's an important lesson for producers for us to all hear and remember, because I lose sight of it, obviously.
yeah. Well, no, and anyone. I mean, nobody wants to be forced into doing something, especially not me. I'm the worst, man. Someone would be like, send me a song, like, check out this song, man.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
like I need to come
Yes.
to a place myself where I,
Yeah.
where I like something. So I never want to put even, so I was working with Dan's wife, Asia. She had a band called Nico Vega. I produced their first 2 records. I don't know if you...
I do know. Nico
Okay.
Vega, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then we were working on a solo album for her in Las Vegas, where they live. And Dan,
Where did you record in Las Vegas?
we just rented a house.
Oh, wow.
And I brought my gear. But Dan would be around all the time. He was off of tour, and he'd be in the room, come in, make comments, and hang out. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, it'd be really cool to work with Dan, wouldn't it? And of course, this was 2014. They're a huge year for them. They had won, I don't know, 3 Grammys or whatever. But again, I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be like, hey man, like,
Sure.
how about we do some, just because
Yeah.
like, I don't know, it's just like creepy or whatever. So it just happened very naturally, and because he really loved a lot of the work I was doing with Asia, and so yeah, eventually it just happened. Took about a year after I knew him to actually start working together.
Osmosis, but those Nico Vega records are fantastic. I remember when they came out, they were very refreshing. And we were talking earlier about different things and how, in reality, we want it all. especially on our end, on the production side, the writing side, we want to be challenged in all kinds of ways, especially coming from a rock background, because the expectations are massive. It's like if you're in a pure pop world, you can retreat, at least I humbly think you can retreat to kind of stereotypes to get things to be, radio ready, all this kind of stuff. But rockers have very high expectations because we have to look at artists like the Beatles, obviously, or the Stones, or Zeppelin, and all these bands that crossed over between rock and pop, which is a lot of pressure.
It's just more, the catalog is so much larger.
It's massive.
And I mean, you pick up a guitar and you play A, and you're like, that sounds like this song, this song, this song, this. You know what I mean? Like, and it's probably getting that way in the sort of pop or EDM world.
Sure.
The other stereotypes are becoming a little obvious.
I love the challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. The bands I like and the albums I like that are coming out now are definitely. I wouldn't call them. It's so weird when people ask you, "Oh, what kind of music do you make?" You're like, I don't know. Rock, like rock?
Yeah.
No, it's not rock. Do you know the band Glass Animals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I love that record. I think that's just. I think Paul Epworth, did that record. He was involved. It was his label.
We were just listening to it last week. We listened to Glass Animals and Everything. You know that band?
I don't.
Oh, you'll love that. They're from Manchester, but you'd like that band too. They can be Muse, but they can also be. They can have rap in them. I think the title of the band says it all. They're just kind of a mixture of everything. But yeah, Glass Animals came up, everything. Bands that are exciting and fresh, that are taking things from everything and, melding it together. And as opposed to, here's our hip hop bit, here's our rock bit, actually blending it together. I'll ask you a question. This is coming up because we're having this discussion. I hear Massive Attack and Portishead from the early mid-90s. And it still kind of sounds like the future to me. I feel like we got lost a little bit with like rock bands putting EDM elements in, and it still can often sound like a rock band with EDM added to it or hip hop added to it. As a producer that's working in a realm where you're mixing those kind of things, how do you get past that? How do you feel like you can blend those elements so they just don't feel like they're colliding, or they're actually living together?
It comes down to instinct ultimately. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's all you can really rely on, As far as techniques, I mean, I think ideally with my records, you'd hear them and you wouldn't know what any sound was.
Right.
You'd be like, what does that sound like? What does that sound like? That would be like, that's my dream. To have someone here, what is that?
Sure.
And I don't know if that answers the question at all, but I think it does, because it's like you're not taking like, I got the rock kick drum and then I got the EDM thing and then I got like that's, to me when I heard you say it, I thought of like Filter, like from the 90s, we have that like, and maybe I like that album a little bit when it came out, but that's I think what the sounds that are fresh right now are, I mean, they're highly manipulated, a lot of them. And then also extremely natural.
Right.
That mix. And that's what I'm really into right now. Like my setup at home, I'm moving my studio right now, but my setup at home was your kind of typical modern production rig, pair of speakers, computer, I have an Antelope, just to say that I do. Just to make sure like if there's a problem with the sound, it's this guy, it's not the equipment.
Sure.
I had that, and then I had a 1940s. It's not like the ultimate rolling bomber, with really nice wood lugs, but it's like the step down. It's a Slingerland.
Yeah.
The 40s stuff.
I do,
because it's all the all the hardware is wood.
Yeah.
Because of the metal shortages and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Second World War. Yeah.
So I had that.
No truss rods in guitars for a while.
Is that? Thing, yeah. Okay.
There's Epiphones with big wood fat necks that didn't have a truss rod in them because of the war effort.
But that's pre-electric guitar.
No, like an arch top.
Right.
They'd have an arch top with this massive wood
solid
neck.
Body, yeah.
Same thing, yeah.
Anyway, so I have that with a single Coles.
Oh wow, nice.
And that is, that's just been recently something that's really been working for me. So you have these kind of super synthetic electronic sounds, and then you have this one mic drum set, that's blended in there. That's, you know, and
Great.
to me, that's such a beautiful contrast. My friend came and was helping me out with production for some of my own material, and I was like, no multi-mic drums. I was like, I don't want to, you know, I was like, the only thing we can do, we can have a mono close, and maybe if you want a stereo room pair.
Interesting.
But I don't, you know, that whole thing where it's like, kick in, kick out. It was a running joke. We'd be like, kick in, kick out, kick left, kick right, kick top, kick bottom. Kick you know, you see these rock productions, and to me, I mean, it's cool, and it's cool that people put in the effort to do that. But to me, it's just, it's not. It doesn't bring a sound that feels fresh to me.
Right. Well, that's good though. But you were talking very earlier about commitment. So if you're committing to a specific sound, then you build a production around it. I mean, that's what's beautiful about so many records that we love. And I've heard this thousands of times, and we've all legally or illegally seen multi-tracks that you just bring up on the console at zero and pan them to the respective place. And that's the record. Because they were forced into that because they had 4, 8, 16 or 20, even 24 tracks, which when I was a kid was a lot. And now I just did I just looked at Sam Smith's Stay With Me. I looked at the multi-tracks and everything on that song, and it's 23 tracks. And that was one of the biggest hits of the last 10 years. Or
choirs, like stereo.
Everything, 23 tracks. Yeah.
But there's a whole choir in that song. Yeah. I'm sure they probably balanced it at some point.
But that's what you would have had to have done on 24.
Right,
Because most of the time we were only working with 23 anyway, because you had to have a SMPTE code if you were triggering any synths or anything like that.
Right.
And we would never print on the first track, first or last ones, because they were on the edge
could be
of the tape.
damaged. Yeah.
So you might put the hi-hat or tambourine there, and you might put the SMPTE on the other side. So you really,
Well, no, that's the cool thing, because I feel like that's where I feel people are cluing into that more.
Yeah.
Like maybe 10 years ago, you're like, oh, it's got to be 256 tracks or something. It's just, I mean, but music has also become a lot more sparse.
Good. Yeah.
I think, and the whole like layered thing just kind of got overblown. But what a beautiful thing to hand a mixer, 23 tracks. And then you can really be an artist. The mixer can really, instead of being a garbage man, I don't know, you know what I mean, or a cleanup crew, or just trying to sort through all this mess. It's just like,
sure, I just certainly don't want to sound like the old guy, like it was better in the. I don't think it's that. I think it's the commitment, the fact that the production can suffer when we don't make decisions. And,
absolutely, yeah.
But I love that idea of, well, look, we even at the most sophisticated Beatles stuff, I don't know if they ever went above a handful of mics. Most of the time, I think it started off with 1/2. Oh, here's a good one. I've talked about this before, so anybody who hears this can laugh at me and be like looking at their watch. But I did a Augustana record, and we modeled it on music from the Big Pink, and I spent like days in the studio trying to get that drum sound, because it's kind of an indiscriminate, like small, tight drum sound that is. And so I spent ages trying to get this same drum sound with all my, 1 billion microphones and mic pre's and compressors and everything at my fingertips. And I got a good drum sound, but I was never quite happy with it. And then I sat down with Shelley Yakus, who recorded that album.
I saw your interview with him. That was amazing. Yeah.
And he mixed it and recorded it. And I said, so tell me about that drum sound. And he goes, we just gave up, because the vocal bleed and then the drums and the drums bleed into the vocal was just too much. So it's all on one track. And I was like, if I had known that, I would have killed myself, because I love that drum sound and that vocal sound, and it's all on one track. So if you want to turn the vocal up, you're also turning up the drums. If you want to turn, it's just like,
that's amazing.
So
no, and I think, and stuff like that, and also bleed between instruments. Mm-hmm. It's really hard, because you're going into a record and maybe you're hired to do it.
Yeah. You
don't want to be the guy at the end of the day and be like, why did you put the vocal on the drum track? You're like, this guy screwed up our record. So you're being very safe.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's just spring up to my mind, and everybody can disagree with this, but I wonder, since the sort of 80s of the mixer now, because that didn't happen till
Clear Mountain or whatever.
Yeah. Do you think that's, Clear Mountain, exactly. Do you think that has, now, do you think we or people are getting nervous about committing because they want to leave options for the mixer? Because when Shelley was making that record, that was it. You know, he did Don't Fear the Reaper, same thing. It was like, you know, if you pull up the faders on the console, that's the sound of the record, you know.
Well, yeah, that's probably why the mixer evolved to be this thing as tracks got more broken out. Then you
Right. But it's
you
sort
really
of, what I'm saying is it's kind of the chicken and the egg, because now, or maybe for the longest time, people didn't want to commit in the same way because they wanted to give the mixer options, and they didn't want to be criticized for not giving the mixer options. And then the mixer starts going, well, you're giving me too much tracks. And they're like, how can we win? I wonder if that culture.
I think we're finding, as I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't have a bird's eye view of the whole
No, it's
industry,
just-
but for me, I think we're finding a really good place with that. And I think, yeah, it's really like the digital thing is still just kind of evolving, and people, you know, figuring out the best way to do it. The funny thing is, so the first track I did with Imagine Dragons was called Levitate, and it was in a movie called Passengers. It was a soundtrack song. They didn't want to tell me, they didn't want to like disappoint me, so they didn't call me and say, oh, we got this big movie, they really want a song. Wayne, the guitar player, just called me and he's like, hey man, could you send me the stems for that song? I was like, yeah, sure. So I sent the stems. He added some guitars to it. They did a few things to it. And then it was like, I got a call. It was like, the song's gonna be in this movie. We got a week to mix it. That's it. So literally, Serban mixed it from like a 2-track drums. Like I was almost horrified because it was one of my like first big songs, and I'm like, oh my god, they're taking the demo, and what is this guy gonna get 8 tracks and mix it? In my perfect world, we would have spent a little more time on that. We just didn't have the time.
Sure.
But I think a lot of times that's happening more and more. It really, especially because, you know, most producers are working in Ableton or they're working in Logic. You're bouncing out your processed sounds. You're not bouncing out a raw kick mic. There is no kick mic, you know.
Sure.
Or whatever you're doing. It's all, the sound's all built in, and it has to be that way. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's great. No, I love this stuff. I mean, getting inside how stuff is recorded, and the reality is a big deal. So
well, I think it's key. Like, to me, that's when you have the less tracks, it's really more about the music. It's less about the tracks.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Or it just becomes like, I can't. I mean, like, you know, I know like your Chris Lord-Alges of the world, like they've gotten that skill, so they have, okay, I've got 125 tracks, I'm gonna break it out in this way. They have a whole method of working and everything, but they've set themselves up so they can keep it musical. Maybe, you know, the way he has his processing kind of pre-dialed and stuff, so he can be a musician, an artist. Sure. You know, he's.
Oh yeah, I mean, watching Chris's mix stuff for me. If Chris on an SSL is like a symphony, he's like, he'll go in, he'll program, you know, he'll be like, I got to turn up the thing, and then he turns it up. You know, I've never seen anybody work as fast on SSL, but not look like he's working fast.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like when I'm on SSL working fast, I'm like flailing around. He just kind of goes, it's just like, blah, and it's like anybody who's really great on their DAWs. They sit there and they edit like they're listening and they need to nudge something back. They're like, blah, it's done. They're not looking at the screen. They know their DAWs so well that they're still listening, and they're just pushing it back, going, "Oh, sounds good." Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It becomes the tools. The tools fade into the background.
But I think Chris works the same way as you were saying with Tom Almquist. I think that, well, I don't think I know. He just makes the same decisions, because the longest time he was working off that, is it the Mitsubishi machine? Sorry, Chris, I don't remember. Which
yeah, no, I know you're talking about Sony.
Yeah, so I think it's 40. I'm probably wrong, top of my head. 48 tracks.
Yeah, I think yeah.
So you could give him 565,000.
I'm a total nerd. I've watched all the videos. So
yeah,
I think it's so 48 dig.
Yeah, so he was already making decisions anyway, going, oh, you've got 16 tracks of backgrounds, boom, stereo pair. So
right.
I think that I think as long as the sessions were organized enough for him to figure out how stuff was done. But yes, you're right. It's interesting because there's so many cans of worms we could open here. One of the things I think with that style of mixing is that a lot of people don't really understand is that when somebody like Chris or his brother Tom or any of these guys are mixing on an SSL and they've got lots of outboard gear. Tom doesn't use as much as outboard as Chris does. You've also got 30 years of acquired knowledge. So when they send something out through something, because people will say to me, oh, well, they mix really fast. I'm like, no, they don't. And I'm going to use this analogy that I've used before. You remember that story of Picasso doing a drawing in a commercial break and then it being shown to an audience and everybody clapping, and the guy says to him who's interviewing him, does it bother you that that drawing that you just took 2 minutes to do is worth, $500,000? And he goes, it didn't take me 2 minutes, it took me a lifetime.
Right.
And that's a big deal, and I think that we all forget that, and especially as we're up and coming. Because I probably did the same thing when I was younger. Like, I can't believe that guy just said 4 words and he's going to get like paid, $100,000 as a producer. It's like, yeah, but he knew the right 4 words to say. He knew to come to me and go, you know what? You need to lay back in the bridge. You're hitting the third. Can you hit the fifth? Can you do this, do that? Boom.
Right. It took 30 years to get there.
30 years to hear all those things.
To hear it and to express it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's really important. And so a lot of reasons why I do what we're doing here is because I learned so much from talking to you, because like I've already thought, from what you were saying, I'm thinking, I don't utilize the Coles mic as much, because even when I'm at Sunset Sound, I pull it back. Where do you put yours? See, because I put mine lower down to the kick so I don't get too much cymbals in it. And often I solo that and think, wow, that's my best drum sound. And then I marginalize it and push it back and start blending my multi mics. And now you're making me think, I should start thinking I'm in a great room, one of the best rooms in the world, to make some of the most famous recordings. And that one mic.
Kind of having that as your fundamental and working around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, or it sort of relates to what we were talking about. It's like you're there in Sunset Sound. You've got the, what is it called?
Their console there.
The Domidio, whatever.
Yeah, the one that they designed, the engineers designed and built. Yeah,
and you have, the mic cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
All this stuff. It's like, how do you tell yourself, like, nope, I'm just going to use one Coles? Like, not that you should, but you know what I mean?
No,
how do you making those decisions where you have to, that's actually, that's sort of the same thing applies to Pro Tools.
Mm-hmm.
You got 128 tracks, you're miking the guitar cabinet, you got 3 mics in the guitar cabinet. Are you going to blend those down to one? I'm a tough one.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I like to anticipate questions people will ask. And one of the things was, well, do you use multi-mics? I personally don't have too much of a good time in multi-mics. I did do it when I was with Jack.
On guitars, you mean?
Yeah,
or just...
Jack Douglas is really big on multi-mics, and he would ask me to multi-mic, and we would do 57s, and we do Royers, and we do Coles pulled back, and we do rooms, which I think is a different discussion. But for close mic, we would do a lot. And then we would create a blend and then commit to that. But I often feel, personally speaking, that I could never get the phase quite as immediate as one mic. And this is just personal. What is your experience?
Well, to me, guitars are such a weird animal that, if you wanted the AC/DCs, I love AC/DC. And I've grown to love AC/DC. I was like a prog head when I was a kid. I'm like,
I am still a prog.
I'm like, AC/DC, you gotta be kidding me.
You want to talk Trespass, Nursery Crime?
Oh man, Genesis, no, dude. Landmines Down. This is
Landmines Down on Broadway. Yeah, we can go on for hours.
We can.
I'm obsessed with all the Canterbury scene bands, and I grew up listening to Can and Henry Cow on the fringes to. Caravan.
You have to turn me on to some stuff.
Caravan, in a land of grey and pink, where only golf girls stop to think. People will be laughing at me. I love prog stuff, because the British prog stuff of that period still loved songs, so you could sing along with those as well as all of the insanity.
Well, no, and I think to me, some people think that prog, or say Genesis, it was all about technique or something. Even Weather Report. People think, oh, it's a showy technique. It's not, man. That stuff is
songs.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, Genesis. I mean, they have that element that Landmines Down is more of a fusion-y record.
What was so amazing about it? They were 8 years old. I mean, they were so freaking young. They were straight out of Charterhouse.
Right.
They were teenagers making those first few albums.
It's mind blowing, yeah.
And then I remember being a kid, and Peter Gabriel was massive with So, and I remember thinking, oh, he's this old guy. He was 32. He'd already had this 12-year career in music.
Right. Well, the second and third, the third and the fourth self-titled albums, what do they call it, Melt Face,
Melt,
Security. That's it.
I think when Hugh Padgham came on, started getting those drum sounds, and that was like flooring to me. No self control.
Right. Well, talking about like pure art music.
Oh,
I mean, that is like.
But then he could also write Salisbury Hill, and he could just like write the biggest pop song that nobody understood.
In 7.
Yeah, and Biko. Biko and Games Without Frontiers.
Yeah.
Talk about Games Without Frontiers. Talk about like a relevant song now politically, or Biko, a relevant song now.
San Jacinto. Yeah. I live on San Jacinto.
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff was.
Just... San Jacinto's, you know where it is, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah, that's amazing.
I thought, like, I was hearing the song San Jacinto. I'm thinking, South Africa? Where is this? Yeah. It's in freaking Palm Springs.
What about like Blue Jay Way? I remember being here for like 6 weeks, and a friend of mine says, "Oh, do you want to see Blue Jay Way?" And I'm like, "Blue Jay Way is in Los Angeles." I'm like, "Oh, of course it is. There's a fog upon LA, and my friends have lost their way." And so we drive up and we go to that little tiny piece where there's a break between houses, and you get to see the whole of Los Angeles.
So guitars.
Yeah.
So to me, yeah, like if you're going, you want the sound of that amp, that Marshall screaming. Yeah, like I'm definitely with you. Like bringing that phase relationship into it.
Yeah.
But sometimes, or like music, like say like Ride, or like like that like shoegazy stuff, like or like having that weird out of phase.
Sure.
Is a sound.
I agree.
And
bass tones when you couldn't visualize. And you couldn't phase shift DIs and bass amps. They could have this perfect mid-range which sat in the mix. Like now I can time align all of my bass elements. So if I have a DI and an amp and maybe another mic or another, I can sit there and I can time everything, and the bottom end is massive and it's beautiful and I love it. However, when I listen to like Queen, it has a controlled low end because that DI and amp, maybe they had a phase control, maybe they ran a digital delay and just nudged it back slightly, but it was always an approximation. Now we can make it so perfect. But yeah, you're right. It's interesting because I listened to, have you ever seen the multi-tracks of like Killer Queen? The bass tone. Listened to
some of those,
Yeah, the bass tone it's slightly out of phase, but if you put them exactly in phase, it's got loads of bottom end in it, but it no longer sounds like this perfectly controlled low end.
Yeah, or the unique sound that it was.
Unique sound it was, yeah. Absolutely.
So that, like, kind of back to what we were saying before. I mean, I think that to me that trumps, especially like in this era, like a monkey can make a perfect record, and like so maybe not.
That's always been my personal thing about rock in the late 90s and early 2000s was that's when the technical took over. And I'm not saying all the records were bad at that period. Don't get me wrong. Of course they weren't, but. Now any kid that's really good at his DMW, if you're 15 years old and you know Pro Tools or Logic so well, you can make a record which sounds like it came out in 2000.
Yeah,
because those records were just completely edited super tight.
Yeah, like
every kick and snare sample was put on there. All the guitars, often DIs, even increasingly, Mick. And the point is everything was like.
Yeah, I can't stand that stuff, man. Because I was a heavy metal fan when I was 14, and early Metallica, and
we got some Metallica fans in the room, don't we, Eric?
Early Metallica, yeah. But the
Ride the Lightning and all that stuff.
Yeah, Master of Justice for All was my my jam. I mean, they did do a lot of editing, as we know, in that stuff. But that human element and in the imperfection.
Right, but they were editing on tape. They had a certain. Dave told me about making those kind of records, not those records, but like Alice in Chains and stuff. They just used to sit there with the grease pencil, the Chinagraph pencil, and go zip, 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 and then just like mark where the kick happened, and then measure a distance if they thought it was like out of time.
Right, no, I hear you. Yeah. But I wonder how did they then, like, in Pro Tools, how you move it and then you open it back.
Oh no, they just have to put a piece of leader tape in there.
You just put like a piece of like whatever they call that, like
leader tape. But the thing was,
it was just a gap.
But it was moving at 30 amps, so it was only like a nanosecond. And maybe a little bit of reverb on the drums to blend it a little bit. But yeah, or they would cut and paste, they would make a dupe tape and then go, well, we like this fill from here or these 4 bars, and then chop those 4 bars out and put those 4 bars back in. And there's no way you could make that fit. If you pulled any of those records back into a grid, even though they were heavily edited, they wouldn't be on a grid.
Right.
Because they may have gone, well, we really like this fill. They chop it in, but that fill may be this fast or this slow.
Right. If you like put up the click track, if there was a click track, if you put the click track, I'd be like,
no, it'd be all over the place. But it's interesting. I worked on a TV show on X Factor for a couple of seasons, and they wanted to do an AC/DC track. So I felt like I wanted to preserve the tempo of the AC/DC track. So I loaded the AC/DC track in and thought, it's Mutt Lange. It's going to be like perfect. There's no click track on it.
Which song it was?
It was
Black and Black. Yeah.
Get on. And now maybe there was a click track and he was taking between multiple takes and putting together. But have you ever listened to AC/DC and thought there was any problem in timing? Heck no. It's just like it feels amazing. And if it feels good, I don't know. I battle this in my mind, and about you, but making records, I continually thinking about that, about wanting to correct something and wanting to let it go and trying not to overdo things, but try to stand back and be the listener. And I think, isn't that really ultimately what a good producer should be able to do? Is we should be able to be the conduit between the band and the person that's going to hear it on the radio. So we can have that ear for them and go, yeah, that's cool that you did that, but it doesn't translate. And I don't know, it's a big question.
Yeah, well, I think the only way to do, certainly the only way that I would want to do that is working with great people, great musicians. Right. And that's what he does here, what Gus does here. They do live to tape.
So this is Gus?
Gus Seifert's
his studio, who for me is cool because he's the current touring bassist for Roger Waters.
He is super cool, man. He's such a cool guy. And I met him first. He was playing with Sia, and I was in the opening band playing bass. And Joey Warrenker was the drummer,
who's also playing with Roger.
Right.
Amazing.
But I was just in awe of this band. I was just like, man, they were so incredible.
Amazing players, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you walked in and Sia is singing live. I mean, dude, it was the most amazing live music.
Sia with that rhythm section, yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. So you did the overdubs for Imagine Dragons tracks here.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the studio and some of the process and how you recorded here.
Sure.
So wait there, what did you say? This is how a mix should look?
This is how all mixes should look. Mix, click, synth. These down, these at 0. I was working with a guy, Dave Sermonara, who's he's one of Gus's engineers, and he was just an absolute joy to work with. When the majority of the stuff I'm working at home, engineering and producing.
Yep. When
I did the drums, I engineered them at their studio in Las Vegas, Imagine Dragons studio.
Oh, beautiful.
But I came here, he's got a house guy, and just talking about what makes a great engineer. It's like this guy was so hands off and yet so hands on. Like he was just exactly where you need him to be, and helpful at all the right moments. But you never felt like, and he just made me feel super comfortable. Anyway, he's a good guy.
No, well, I think knowing the room, knowing how everything's patched and how to get from A to B, but also I think engineering is anticipating, isn't it? Going, well, I heard that was a little bit behind, so maybe he's going to want to move it forward. And you go, hey, you see that kick? And boom, it's like done. Okay, great. Not like, oh, what do you mean?
Right.
Having an ear so that he knows exactly where to go. I also love guys where you go, obviously, stupidly simple things like, can you take me to the bridge? And they actually know where the bridge is.
Well, no, he went through.
Sounds kind of silly, but
the first thing he did is he went through and he color coded all my tracks.
Beautiful.
Made all his markers. So he was like, when I said, can we go to the bridge? He knew exactly where it was. Can we do a guitar? He was right there.
Yep.
And I actually generally prefer to engineer my own stuff because you have that, you're once removed, instead of, they have to communicate to someone and they have to do it. But when you have a great guy, it's actually, it's better. It's the best. And you can just be listening.
Wonderful. So you used this piano. Couple of things. Which song was it on? Or did you use it on both?
It was on both the songs on the record.
Beautiful. I love this.
And I think I just replaced.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I think it's got. Look, I think when I used it didn't have the felt. He's got felt taped on here.
Oh, I love it.
Well, I've heard you talk about this before
Yeah.
in your other shows, but it's like you go to a studio and they have like the Steinway Grand,
Yeah.
and you play and you're like, eh.
Yeah, you're like,
it's like that. I could, you could.
yeah.
It's better than a plug-in for sure, but
Right.
it's just, it's kind of a boring sound. And now, like when I play piano and you have something like this where you have the felt in there,
Yeah.
or you press the soft pedal, and you're like, wow, that is such a,
Sure.
it's so nuanced and such a different kind of sound. And all the stuff he has here, we one of the tracks that didn't make the album, we used a bunch of these guitars. I can't see.
Love that. See this gets me excited, and everybody knows why. I mean, here it is, a good old-fashioned 70s Yamaha. To me, this is like. Oh, drop D.
Like Dad
Oh,
Gad?
Dad Gad.
Yeah.
A D. Beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love guitars like this because they have so much more personality. Same thing you were just talking about with the piano.
Right. I think that's very much, as far as I understand, Gus's thing is, the instruments with a lot of character, and not, not just the old standbys.
No, I agree. I think that's a huge deal because, and you're right. I pointed it out with pianos in particular, but the reason why I think a lot of us love listening to those Beatles recordings, especially the mid-late 60s stuff where they started to experiment, was they were experimenting. And they may have had traditional instruments, but they were either miking them in weird ways, or as Jeff Emmerich said, they were just moving quickly. I mean, one of his things he was talking about with using that AKG mic was it was just a mic that was plugged in and it was going through the Altec, and he would just kind of like move it around because they'd have different ideas. We're talking about it with Nigel Godrich and his chain, how he uses a chain. It's like keeping the creativity flowing.
And as far as I know and everything I've read about them, their goal was to have that's what they wanted. They didn't want the piano to sound like a piano.
Right.
Like that's why close miking started, because there was like such a weird thing to do. What was that?
The kick drum story about.
Well, no, with the horns in is it Penny Lane or one of those where they stuck them right in there. It's like the mic's like right in the horns, and like they were. It's interesting because like we're talking about that like sort of like the big '90s production rock, and it's almost like things became more conservative,
right?
And people are like, I want the best drum sound, And like the Beatles, I mean, I know that Day in the Life, that was the goal. This has got to be the best drum sound ever.
Oh, those toms.
Yeah. But I mean, I think a lot of times they were going for. I mean, with all the Vari-Speed stuff and everything they did, like they wanted weird fucking sounds.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole thing about Penny Lane because they spit it up. Penny Lane, there is a dub.
By accident, like in mastering, or
No, I'm sure it was done for tempo reasons, but of course it affected, Paul McCartney's pitch. But then there's like these conspiracy videos where people are saying it's not really Paul because it doesn't sound like his voice. But all it did was speed it up. There's all kinds of silliness, which it's fun to.
Yeah, no, sure, why not?
But yeah, I mean, those were the days. I mean, comes from just like, let's tune the guitar, there's an E. Now, who knows how in tune that piano was, and then it was a case of like, we need to speed up the song, so just very speed it to make it faster. Now suddenly it's an F.
Right.
It's like.
Well, then when they went back and did the Sgt. Pepper remaster, they fixed some pitches on stuff.
What do you think? Have you heard it?
No, I mean, not properly. I haven't like sat and really listened to it, but I mean, personally, I think why are you doing that? But whatever. Hey,
I think the remastering I get, because this is a conversation about vinyl, because even Pete Lyman, I'm sure you know Pete over at Infrasonic. I mean, he's like an amazing master engineer who masters specifically for vinyl and has a lathe and everything. Even he said on camera, he's like, vinyl doesn't sound better because I have to compromise it to go onto vinyl. But obviously we love the experience of that cover and the gatefold and the fact that you can read who worked on the record, read the players and the songwriters and the engineers and the producers. Everything is so fantastic about vinyl, the whole experience of it. So I don't mind the remastering because I get, like Harry Weinberg said, he was at the cusp of the vinyl CD revolution. And he said that it was refreshing to him because now suddenly he could take a mix and not screw it up. He could let the bottom end breathe.
Right,
he could let
right.
the top end go through. And it was like, there it is. I can keep the integrity of the mix. So I think that that was always a great, great thing. So I love being able to hear a bit more air and a bit more low end on the recordings the way that the band did in the studio. But I do think it's a gray area when you're talking about remixing.
Remixing, yeah. Well, you heard the Genesis remixes.
I did, yes.
And there's a huge...
huge difference. It is nice to hear the how amazing the drumming is on those records.
Yeah, you can hear...
quite... Some of those Grace Note stuff, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And I do like it.
And actually, like some of like not to turn this into a prog rock
No.
geekery thing, but like a Trick of the Tail, like those records. I mean, I love those early Phil Collins records. And it wasn't until I actually got the vinyl and put it on the record player, and you put it on, like, oh, like the sound of this record makes sense.
Yes.
You hear it on CD, you're like, this sounds terrible. Like what? So yeah, I think remastering to sort of bring it up to the medium, that's...
Well, when I was talking to Howie said one of the issues is that when the CD revolution happened, as we know, it was a huge deal, not every label was bothering to remaster. So what was happening is they were taking these vinyl masters and putting them out on CDs. So they didn't have extended low end and high end. In fact, worse still is that people were taking their CD players and of course they had them plugged into an auxiliary input, which didn't always have, of course, an RIAA curve. So it didn't compensate for the vinyl.
Oh, it was literally without, wow, that's...
So people were listening to stuff without the compensation that vinyl had. So it wasn't an accurate representation. Anyway, I don't want to get off into the geeking, but I'm sorry.
No, hey.
Hey, you caught me on one of my tangents early when I asked you about guitars and then went off onto a subject.
Oh.
I'm famous for my tangents.
Well, there's so that's the beautiful thing is that there's so much
so much we can talk about in that one.
Yeah, so many little avenues. And I mean, I think part of the reason, when I was going to do this thing with you and I said I don't really want to talk about gear, I mean, obviously, we all love gear.
Sure.
No records are made without gear.
Yeah.
But I think it can be a pitfall.
Yes.
And it can be, and I do it myself. I'll be like working on a song and like, maybe I need it better. Should I get the Dangerous? Oh, look it up. I mean, it's a cool thing to be absorbed in, but it's not music. I mean, it's a tool. It's a tool.
Right. Can I ask you a question? I've asked this for a couple of people, and it's hotly debated. Do you feel it's a benefit to be a musician as well as a producer?
Oh, as a producer to have a music background?
Mm-hmm. Be a musician, yeah.
Certainly for me.
Right.
I mean, there's been some great producers who weren't.
And
maybe it gives you, maybe you really have an outside perspective. I'm a guy that very much likes to jump in and really be a part of it. And like we were talking about earlier, I'm probably not the best person for every project. There's projects that don't need a guy to jump in. There's projects where you should put some mics up and press record, and that's your job, And I think that sort of answers the question.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Look, I'm a musician turned engineer producer guy like yourself. One of the reasons why I started doing this is because I felt like where we're at the moment mirrors what I had to do, because I didn't come up like yourself, like assisting in studios. I didn't go to one of the recording schools. I wasn't an intern, assistant, blah, blah, blah. I was just a guy that made music and then always did things out of necessity. In fact, everything I've done has always been out of necessity. Sometimes not being able to break through a door. So I'm just going to do it myself and try and get people to notice me that way. And now that is what everybody has to do. Because there's half a dozen great studios in LA, corporate's not a bad word. What I mean is like proper recording studios.
Right.
And then everything else is like this. I mean, obviously this is a beautiful home studio, but this is still essentially a home studio. And this is the new world. And obviously Gus is an accomplished, famous bass player and session player and touring musician that can also produce and record. So yeah, I just like to, because I feel like what's great about that is that anybody with musical love, passion, and talent can now do this.
No, absolutely. And personally, I'd rather not a knock on any big studios, but I'd rather work here than work in
Sure.
wherever, big studio. I mean, again, you know, just having something that has a unique personality, and this is real. I mean, this is like,
Well, the instruments make a huge difference.
Oh, well, yeah.
And just so you know, the studio tour were reserved for Gus because it's his tour.
Generally speaking, you know, the old school. When I was really young, I did a session at Bearsville, probably right before it closed.
I never did that.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was playing bass, but that was one of those places. You walk in, they got a piano, organ, console, tape machine. I think they had a B15, but there was there was no instruments at the studio.
Right.
There was no. I mean, obviously, in those days, you had a rental budget, and that's how you assembled your palette.
Right.
But I much prefer to come in a place like this and have all these, you know, cool tools around.
Totally. Yeah, I think with Peter Gabriel, you know, you're talking about prog and stuff. I feel like, isn't it amazing to see? You know what? That's what I want. We were talking about when we first met, and we were talking upstairs. That's what I want. That's what I want. I hope for every artist, that they get afforded that opportunity, that they get afforded the opportunity to be artistic, explore creativity, and hone their skills. Because all the greatest artists, whether it be the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, whatever, the list of everybody, Pink Floyd is a great example. Pink Floyd started off writing little 60s psychedelic pop songs, Arnold Lane, or I got a bike, you can ride it if you like, you know.
Right.
And they were afforded the opportunity from that to go to, as we're just talking about, the ambience and the Omegamas and the Obscured by Clouds, right through to Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and then eventually end up with The Wall, which I arguably one of the freaking greatest albums ever made in the history of freaking music. You can tell I like that album.
Was that made in 79?
79, yeah, released in 80.
I mean, just the sound.
Hairs all standing on end.
Just the sound of the record. You hear other records made in 79, you're like, that.
And you know what I love about it? To me, it's the Winston Churchill of records. Everybody's going, what is he talking about? Winston Churchill was the great world leader because he was not a stick-in-the-mud English aristocratic idiot. His mother was American, his father was English, and he was able to unite us in a common good to do some really good for this world because of that. The Wall, to me, is that. The Wall is guys like Bob Ezrin, who's one of the greatest American producers. They start the album, English guys in England, and then they come and they finish it in America. It's like, to me, why it's such a great record is it's that blend again of what was great about British music and what was great about American music, and it came together with arguably one of the best sounding records, but the blend of all of those cultures and everything. Because as Mike Bloomfield said, the British took American music and sold it back to the Americans. I mean, our folk music is hoity-doidly-doidly-doo, you know. It's
Right,
not.
when it went the other way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not country and blues mixed together to create rock and roll.
but what, you know, when you think, as far as hoping that, you know, artists really get the opportunity
Yes, to grow and develop.
Yeah. And I think, I mean,
You didn't have you had home recording, you know, maybe in the 60s, but you didn't have home studios. So you saw a lot of that growth happening when you say you use Pink Floyd, the arc, you know, going from the early pop stuff and then experimental period into this.
I mean, the Beatles, aren't they really the first boy band?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I mean, like talking about
Same
like,
haircuts, suits, doing largely covers at first.
yeah, that's like manufactured pop essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, they had their brilliance, which made it amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah, their twist. Like as we were talking about with Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers, where he talks about the Beatles had done
10,000
more,
hours. Yeah,
more live shows and by the time they made their first record than you two have done in their career.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's one of
That's
the early
pretty
things
cool,
in
yeah,
Outliers. Yeah.
Sometimes you're hanging out with musicians and older guys or you know my age, whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, well, back in the day the music was so great, and now it's that like I get angry.
Yeah, that's a load of
Yeah, no, I think it's bullshit, and I think it's also it's kind of an excuse not to get off your ass and do something great because. You know,
I think we're at the beginning of a revolution. This is what I really, really believe. I think we're at the beginning of a revolution. Like you're pointing out, we had all this freedom. Oh my God, you got as many tracks as you could ever need. Got all this equipment, you got this, you got that, you got all this access. You got the plugins where you have the best Steinway sound, the best Beckstein, the best whatever, Bosendorfer.
Right.
Everything's available now. And now everybody's like pulling back and going, okay, but why does everybody always talk about Pink Floyd production or the Beatles or whatever. Why are people always talking about these records? Oh, okay. It's because of focus. Maybe it was the limitations that were forcing it, but they were always pushing the boundaries. So I think it's a great time. I think it's just, and it's almost like, because pop music is the only thing that sells millions and millions of records, it's almost not a bad thing. It almost means now rock has the freedom, and every other genre has the freedom now to like push the boundaries. It's a great time.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some stuff, you know, when I never had a song that had, 3 million plays or, 5 million plays, and you're like, what's that going to mean? Like, what's that equate to in dollars? And it's depressing.
Yeah.
It's really a messed up situation. Strictly in the business sense. I mean, stuff's got to happen, and I don't know. It's such a hard thing because you got, guys like me and you. We want to be making music. We don't want to be like,
Sure.
I don't know. What do you do? Like calling your congressman? Like I'm like, I wake up in the morning and I want to
Sure.
like get on the piano and try and create something. So I have a couple ideas about that.
That's good. What are your ideas?
Well, I feel like it's almost, and I'm not a business person, and I don't know much about this stuff, but to me, it's about, loosely speaking, unionizing. And I mean, stuff like, Taylor Swift has made an attempt to, she said she took her stuff off Spotify and she's trying to protest this thing, but there's no unity.
Right.
So somebody else, Katy Perry has her stuff on Spotify, and so then she couldn't sustain it. Now her stuff is back on. If you could have a unity of people, or a situation like, I was in Montana hiking. I go to this weird hotel bar, and they're playing Pandora over the system. What are they paying? Like $10 a month? Like this art that we're creating, and there's other people creating, is creating the ambience of this space, and they're paying $10 a month. Like, and I hope that it doesn't sound like I'm like, oh, I want more money, but I mean, it's just absurd, I mean, and to have the value stripped by like tech interests. I don't know. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, do you think that that's?
I'm completely split.
Right.
And I hear all arguments, and I'm still processing, because I like the beauty of. One of my main concerns is like, well, not main concerns. My main thing is there's no going back. There's no backwards. We can't teach a 13-year-old kid that's never bought a CD.
No, we're not.
to buy a CD.
Yeah, clearly.
So I agree, though. What we both have the same opinion that I have of yours, where we completely align, is when it all becomes unified. So I actually don't think Spotify is a bad thing once the whole world uses one platform, and once everybody gets behind and figures it out properly, because that's an inevitability. I think streaming is here to stay, and I think we're also scratching the surface with Spotify. As many people as using it, it's not that many. It's really not that many yet. Right. But can you imagine when 10 times more people are using it and 10 times the earning? It becomes a whole different thing. So I think there's lots of, but I think your point and the biggest thing I take away from it is, if everybody could actually get together and have a common voice, we could probably sort this out.
Absolutely.
That's really the biggest takeaway for me, is like, can we all just stop complaining about it and actually start talking and coming up with a unified thing that helps everybody? Because it's going to help Spotify. It's going to help everybody if we all talk the same language. And yes, I agree with you. One of the biggest problems I have is, and not being 22, I'm sort of in the other side. I'm in the over 40 thing. It's like, let's stop saying how wonderful, as much as I've just been talking about the Beatles and Pink Floyd for a minute, let's stop saying how amazing that was and get out of the past, get into the present, not even the future, the present.
Yeah.
And start getting behind our artists, supporting our artists, and do what's best for everybody rather than what's just best for individuals. But it always seems to be about people's individual interests. It's funny because like we do name check artists of doing things, but quite often it's for their own best interest, their own quick way to sell an extra 1 million copies and get a headline. We got to find a way where we're unified. And you said it, unionizers always scares people, doesn't it? Because the word union, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think if we can all have a common voice, it will do better.
Right. Like, what if, the top 10 selling artists on Spotify all said, we don't accept that you can if you're in a business setting, you don't pay $10 a month.
Right.
Like if you're using this music as part of your business,
Right.
and it's funny because again, you know, I'm saying that, and I feel like as an artist, you're not supposed to talk about those things, or it can
Sure.
come across as being sort of, oh, I'm like, anyone who's in music is doing it because they love music.
Right.
If they've lasted for more than 6 months.
No, but you're making a good point, because you look at wow, how many artists famously, so many artists. A couple of them I've worked with, so I'm not going to use their names, but so many incredible artists that we grew up listening to, legacy artists, people have careers of 40 or 50 years, got so badly ripped off by managers, lawyers, record companies, usually the people in the middle between the record company and themselves. People inserted themselves in the middle,
Right.
like signing to them, then signing to a label. That was so common through the 60s, 70s, and 80s in particular, and some of the 90s, that, yes, you're right. The problem is we just want to be artists. All of us want to just be artists and create music. But out of that naivety came a lot of manipulation by, you know,
by nefarious.
by nefarious kind of like managers that basically owned an artist and signed them to a label and got like, here, $100 came in and the artist got a fraction of the earnings. And I can think of many, many famous cases.
Absolutely. Well, it's
People that don't even own their music now, 40 years later.
yeah. Well, the business can be totally insane, and I mean, I try to laugh, you know, as much as I can, and just, you know.
But I think it's important for artists to educate themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Did you read the thing with Desmond Child?
I haven't yet. I saw that a couple of weeks ago that he had something
Yeah.
out, and he's an incredible writer.
Yeah, no, he was saying, I mean, he was saying basically what I was saying, just as far, or he was just, the way he put it, because he was saying, okay, I think it was You Give Love a Bad Name or whatever. It's like, he was like, on Pandora alone, that had like 500 million streams in a year, and his income was like $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a songwriter for that, and I mean,
Yeah, it's quite silly.
yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, if it was like nobody was making money off it, but people are making money from that. You know?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that needs to be done to help.
And because we need to sustain art. This is important.
And ultimately, I'm sure you completely agree what I'm about to say, 100%. It's not even so much about the big writers that already live in their huge mansions and have their whatever. It's about like, how do we help up and coming artists?
Right, no, absolutely.
That's
because people come out, you know, your Lars Ulrich or whatever will come out and say, then people look at them and say, "Oh, you have so much money."
Yeah, it just sounds so entitled.
Yeah.
Because they can still go off and tour and make $100 million
Right.
in
No,
6
but
months.
it's about
the young up and coming artists.
Yeah, and people have to.
And this goes back to our first question of like, how do we afford that to an artist? Because that's what we want. We want, because it just doesn't happen overnight. You don't just wake up one day and your first album's Revolver, but you have to almost start with Revolver now.
Yeah, and you don't get, like, I don't know about other people, but I couldn't work an 8-hour shift at McDonald's and then come home and write Revolver. Like, you're exhausted. Like, you need the space and the time to really, if you're gonna make something that's amazing, you know, you need to put the time in. It's unless you just have rich parents, you know, it's pretty difficult to do that.
So it's a whole other discussion. Being in Los Angeles, we know lots of those stories.
Right. Well, no, and I don't, you know, fault anyone for anything.
No,
but
all that matters is the art.
yeah,
If it comes out the other side and it's incredible, you know. Let's be honest. It's some of the best music, the best art of anything doesn't always come from. Most of the time doesn't come from like people being like, I am the most perfect human being in the world, you know. Great art can come from great struggle, almost always, you know. So
definitely,
it's like,
trying to think about. Well, I'm thinking about like Jocko.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge Jocko fan.
It's tragic, but
yeah. Did you watch the documentary?
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible? And I know I've talked about this before for anybody watching the Peter Erskine thing at the end. One of the last things at the end of the movie, when a fan came up to him, do you remember this? And said, you know, Jocko just died, and a fan came up like all teary-eyed and said, how could you let this happen?
Huh.
It's pretty powerful, because I wonder that with a lot of artists like Amy Winehouse, a lot of artists that a lot of people profit from great art, and some of our most incredibly talented people are some of the most fragile human beings. And when I see people killing themselves over the pain they've gone through, whether it go right back to, well, decades and decades.
Yeah, no, and now it's just like,
Now it's insane. Yeah.
yeah. Or,
And-
Elliott Smith
Yep.
here in Echo Park, that was
Yeah.
his, and to me, he's probably the most brilliant artist of the last 30, 40
Right.
years. I mean,
He's definitely our sort of modern day troubadour, definitely. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think Yamaha guitar.
Was that his
70s
thing?
acoustic,
Oh, yeah,
probably similar, if not the same model, yeah. It was funny because I said that to Rob Snaff and he's like, yeah, that's what we use. We use that guitar. He goes, it was a pain in the ass to EQ, but that's what we use. And it's like, but it's not even so much, I'm not trying to sell Yamaha 70s acoustics. That's not my point. My point is that you make do with what you got. And if that was his thing that he used and that's what he loved, you're not going to go, no, Elliot, what about this beautiful Martin from 1922? It's
right.
Yeah, maybe it plays better and it sounds better with a mic on it, but
Yeah, we're talking about tool. I don't know why I was just thinking about it driving here and thinking about gear and thinking about toolables, and it's like you had a Fisher, if you remember, Fisher boombox.
yeah.
You had a Fisher boombox. I mean, you could make music. You could record on a Fisher boombox something that would touch your heart, as much as doing on all this. So this is amazing stuff. We all love it. It's wonderful. I wish this was my studio, but just remembering that it's just tools, and what's really going to touch you is that emotion, the human emotion, the human touch.
I agree. I see continuity, and this is really what I hope we can establish with these kind of conversations. I see continuity. Like, my favorite band in the world is Queen. Hands down, favorite band. Everybody who watches me knows that I talk about them far too much. But they're the reason why I do music, because I heard A Night at the Opera as a little kid. I was super young, and I listened to it and just blew my mind. And I wanted to know how music like that was made. And that's why eventually I end up in recording, because it's a production masterpiece. But if you listen to it, it's a performance-based record. Even though it's a multi-track record, all of the backing tracks were all done live in a room.
Right.
It's a performance-based record with overdubs. So it's, to me, is now, and there's that same continuity from a production masterpiece like that to an Elliott Smith acoustic guitar vocal. There's a continuity, and just like we're talking about with like crazy political stands from the extremes, there is this meeting in the middle where the art lives. And that is there, whether it be Elliott Smith, Queen, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, I don't know, Lynyrd Skynyrd, who cares what it is? The greatness. We're talking about, look, Americana records that Shelley did. Shelley did Roy Buchanan albums. And if you know Roy Buchanan, oh my God, this stuff is amazing.
I don't, yeah.
Oh,
I was thinking about like Otis Redding or something
Otis
like
Redding, Marvin Gaye.
that. Because people hear those, or, I think sometimes people hear this and they go, oh, what tape machine was that? It's like, who gives a fuck?
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? It's not, it is. It has
Right.
something to do with the sound, for sure, and then the distortion, really, that they brought to it. But
Sure.
what you're hearing is this performer who had to sing through
Right.
crappy PAs and
I do. There is like, there's always exceptions that prove the rule, because I agree with you 100 billion%. But then I recently discovered that Acme DI. You know about that one?
No, is it new?
It's made by a company in Detroit, and all they did was they took the original Motown DI from Detroit and just reproduced it. They had to remake the transformer that was in it. And the only reason why I mentioned that was because if you read about how they made those records, they plugged directly in. So the bass tone and the guitar tone didn't go through amps. So what ends up happening is that DI actually becomes part of James Jameson's sound, because the big transformer sucked up the transients and sucked up the high end. And it's one of the few DIs I've ever used where it just sounds like a bass sound that I don't have to EQ anymore or compress anymore. It seems to come out flat. So there's definitely, like, when we search down pieces of information and we're after a specific sound, that the gear comes in useful. But I do 100 billion% agree with you. It's not about the gear.
Right.
But the creative process goes, you say to me, oh, Warren, I really love that bass sound because I'm trying to do a Motown-y thing. And I say to you, oh, try this DI out. It'll get you close to it. But that is born out of your creative mind asking the right questions and a band coming to you and wanting to do something. It's not born out of like having the gear making the record.
Right.
It doesn't dictate the record. Your creativity dictates the record.
Well, and it can work, and like I feel like I'm contradicting myself, but
No.
it can also work the other way. Like you plug, oh, check out this DI, and you plug in. All of a sudden, I'm like,
wow.
and you
I should play with my thumb. I should use the
yeah,
felt pick.
or I should, or this bass line, or it inspires something in you. So it can work. It can work both ways.
No, but it's acquired knowledge. It's going back to what we're talking about with Chris, Chris Aldowsy, CLA, that his acquired knowledge is off the charts from making records. One thing I want to say, and I don't know if I've ever said this on camera, Tim Pierce told me that he did a record in the 80s with Chris Aldowsy producing, and he said it was the best production experience he ever had.
Huh.
And I found out later that nobody knows this, that Chris is like a freaking virtuoso piano player. His favorite band is Genesis.
I saw that thing where he had the sheet music to
he plays the
Lamb
standard
Lies Down
plays
on Broadway.
So we forget that. It's like, he's this big superstar rock mixer. But yeah.
Right. I thought that was so interesting that because he does a lot of music that I might not be so into, some like big like bro pop.
Yeah, or some of those modern rock bands that we're joking about.
Yeah, it's not really my thing, but
like
the fact that he came from that music, I was like, that's so cool,
Yeah.
And even a guy like Thundercat, he did a bunch of the Kendrick Lamar stuff.
Yeah.
He used to play in Suicidal Tendencies.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And he's making these hip hop records, and he was there's some interview with him. He's talking about how he was listening to Testament.
Sure.
Like these early 90s.
Testament.
Yeah, man. Like this guy, that's he's probably my age. I mean, that was like what I was listening to, in the early 90s when I was 14 years old.
We all bring all of our experiences. We were talking about.
Right. No, I'm saying, yeah, like
stuff.
what Chris is bringing this amazing, prog sound that he's heard and all this insane music and applying it to this thing. I mean, it's so cool what you can do.
People say to me, I'm married with kids, and it takes a lot of energy, obviously. There's a lot of people watching that have families as well, and balancing work and family and stuff together. I want to ask you this question. People say to me, what do you do when you have time off for yourself? I play guitar.
Right.
It's what I am. I love music. So when I actually get Warren time and say my wife is with the kids somewhere, I pick up the guitar and I play guitar for pleasure. What do you do when you're not working?
Well, I like hiking and camping and just getting out in nature. And to me, that's when I want to, if I'm working a week straight, and I like to hit it pretty hard when I'm working. Like my thing to do is I wake up in the morning, make up, like if no one's around, I make a cup of coffee, sit down at the piano, and just that was kind of my practice for a couple of years, really consistently, like writing every single morning first thing. After 2 weeks of that or whatever, then it's like at the time my girlfriend was living in New York, and we would meet up at like Yosemite, or we'd meet up in Colorado, and you just go out there, and that's some great perspective,
Absolutely. Clear the head. I love the idea of being, because my most creative time is first thing in the morning. I agree.
Definitely.
Yeah. I don't think biologically it's when your brain waves are going insane or something.
Yeah, well, it's everything's rested and you're all fresh.
I also like late at night because nothing's happening and all the lights are out and it's just you and whatever.
It can be a different zone, yeah. And all the places I've lived in the last 3 years, like there's no TV, there's no couch.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like there's just studio.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, but I mean, it's just that's all I want to do, and I feel even going to see a movie, it's like really hard for me. I'm like 2 hours. That's like
go see Dunkirk. Have you seen it yet?
Okay, I will. Yeah, I'll watch like a
You're like
Hitchcock movie or something.
Hitchcock, yeah. There's definitely, it's interesting. I think we're in a great creative place, like talking about movies. I mean, there's a movie with no CGI in it that you still feel like you were there. I just think artistically, without talking about that movie specifically or any piece of music specifically, just we're in a very exciting time. And I do think more and more there is a revolution happening that we don't realize, but it actually is. And I feel really, really good about the future. I really do.
That's awesome. Me too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we're here.
Yeah.
This is
We're blessed that we can make a living doing music.
absolutely.
And the one thing I want to tell people is that you can.
It's true.
And the fact that all of the gatekeepers are dissipating, and now it's up to guys like us to encourage each other, encourage the artists to bring this stuff out. It's a really exciting time to be making music.
And I think it's a little bit different now. When we probably sort of similar generation. Like when I growing up, were your parents musical?
No, they weren't. But my dad, they weren't at all. But my dad's a painter. He's an artist.
Okay.
So I had a arts freedom. I had the freedom to do what
Somebody
I
who
wanted.
understood what it meant to be an artist. Yeah. My parents are both lawyers, and they're very cool.
Right.
But it was a challenge to. I mean, it was always sort of like, you're not really going to do this thing, right? This is, And
Well,
I totally get it. I get it.
I think parents do that regardless, because I think as a parent myself, if my son came to me and said he wanted to do music, I'd be like,
yeah.
sure you don't want to do computers?
Probably me too. Probably me too. Actually, when I did a tour opening up for Imagine Dragons before I was working with them, and just meeting them, and Dan, I knew him before they were a famous band. He was just a dude, but he was the first guy I knew personally who he wrote a song every single day.
That's amazing. So he lived the Malcolm Gladwell, Tony Robbins experience.
Yeah, no,
Just do it. Yeah.
No, and I think that's what it takes for sure.
And you saying this to people, you don't have to believe these guys. You don't have to read Malcolm Gladwell and think he's the Bible, or Tony Robbins. But I do think that they help me, especially Gladwell, to just think arts, and just think art has value, but also it feeds my creativity and my soul. I love the fact that you said you went hiking and stuff, because I actually respond to that, because I remember making a record in Sausalito, and we'd go on these hikes through Golden Gate Park and everything, because it was the only bleeding time when we were doing 15-hour days, 6, 7, 8 days in a row, and taking half a day off to get any sense of normalcy. Otherwise, we were coming back and we were just like
right
obsessing about the tempo of a song and not knowing if it was right. Was it too fast? Was it too slow?
I think sometimes people believe that there's a lot of luck involved in this.
Thank you for touching on this.
Yeah. And my experience, and I think I believe that too to some degree growing up.
But I hear relationship building.
Oh no! I don't believe that now.
I hear it from
not
you.
at all. And it's so funny because like
you're talking about touring with the same guy that you made records with. You're talking about working with his wife.
Oh, that's what it's
building
all
relationships.
About. And that's why it's actually being a musician is it's very much a spiritual experience, because it forces you to because in a way you're a musician, you're an introvert. And you want to have this music thing and your little thing, but you got to open it up, and you got to work with other people and make these relationships. And it can be hard. It's hard for me. It wasn't like I'm not a socialite.
Yeah.
But back to the thing about luck, it's like, or I did a tour with the Killers. A sideman did a little tour with them. This was last summer.
Oh, okay. My friend we just talked about at 300, Pete Jaberger. Do you know who that is? He's over at 300. He was, I think, the only American A&R guy who got them. Because you know the story, how America just
they broke
was
in
like,
England, yeah.
They were like, nah, this is never going to work. It sounds too English and too 80s. And Pete Jaberger was, God bless him, I don't know if the Reynolds know this, but he was running around going, no. He was at Epic going, this band's going to be huge.
Right.
And everybody in America was going, nah, they're too English, too 80s. Then they broke in England at Lizard King, came back over here as conquering heroes from Europe, and the rest is history. They pretty much defined indie, whatever you want to call it, rock for the last 15 years. Whether it's Young the Giant, Imagine Dragons, or whoever it is that's big at the moment, they all owe something to the Killers.
Right. And you hear their songs on the radio or something, and people going into the situation, you're like, are these guys just like incredible musicians, or like are they like? And my experience with them is those guys are, and Brandon in particular, I don't think I've ever worked with somebody as sharp as him. He was so sharp. I was did a lot of keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be like, oh, that inversion's a little weird. Like, not like
Sure.
when everyone was playing, like in
Yeah.
an arena.
Thinking like a producer. Thinking like a
No,
producer.
like in
but
an
from a singer.
arena.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, the guy, like,
Yeah.
you know, so
That's great.
to me, my experience is that really luck has very little to do. There's some of that, but it's,
I think their story is definitely, if you're going to look at any modern band, the Killer's story, I only see it from the peripherals, but knowing how it happened and being around while it happened, there's definitely no luck. Because there's a band that could not get arrested in America.
Right.
Every A&R guy, they're all tell you different now. Nobody wanted, no.
same thing with Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, no,
They were going to had a little label that was going to put them out.
Yeah.
And then Alex the Kid discovered them, and
Yeah.
that was when but they were, like I said, when he was writing songs every day, he was just a dude, like living in East Hollywood.
Yeah, there are obviously exceptions to the rule, but it seems like that's a common thread, whether it be the Beatles getting signed to Parlophone, a comedy label. The head of A&R was also the staff producer, George Martin. I mean, there's a very common thread. I mean, Nirvana were on Sod Pop. I think the great lesson is from it is that it can happen to you if you work hard, create your own luck. Because create your own luck is the phrase I kind of like, because I know, what about when Lucinda Williams won Best New Artist? Was she won, or was it Shelby Lynn? Sorry, I can't remember. I can't remember if it was Shelby or Lucinda, both. There was an artist in their 30s winning Best New Artist, which is great. But it sort of perpetuates some myth that they woke up one day and were talented. It's like, no, they worked their arse off.
Well, people I think that it's a myth people want so you know the media wants to promote, and that's cool. You know, it makes it you can feel like, oh, being an artist is like special. And someone came down and threw the magic fairy dust and made you this great artist. It's like,
well, I think the worst question that I could have asked you, and that could be asked of anybody, is, so what was your big break? That's sorry to roll my eyes, but I hear that asked on, like, I'll watch late night talk shows, and I see them asking that of a comedian, a actor, or a musician. I'm like, why did you just ask that question? Because you know that they had worked for 15 years, they got an opportunity, and they didn't screw it up, and then they carried on not screwing it up.
Sometimes it's hard not to screw it up.
Yeah. But what's the big break?
Right. Well, no, I mean, because sometimes it does happen in those motions, and that's why people see it as this big break. But it's just years and years of slogging it out and just doing it out of love.
Wonderful. All right, we'll wrap it up because I know we've both got to get on. Thank you ever so much.
Awesome. Yeah,
I really appreciate it. As ever, please subscribe. Leave a bunch of comments and questions below. Maybe I can get you to answer some.
I'd love to.
Marvelous. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. We'll see you all again soon.